Korean Mafia boss desperately hired a black lady as his bodyguard. She took down 15+ assassins in one night. Part 2. The silence after violence has its own weight. Jin Hyuk's compound stood eerily quiet the morning after the full moon massacre. 15 professional assassins lay in secured rooms throughout the estate, all alive, all broken in different ways, all united by a singular fear of the woman who had defeated them. Jin's remaining security personnel whispered among themselves. They had witnessed something impossible. One woman dismantling an elite kill team without taking a single life. The rumors spread like wildfire through Seoul's underworld. The Black Lady wasn't just good. She was something else entirely. In her private quarters, Zora Knight locked the door and collapsed against it, sliding to the floor as tremors racked her body. The adrenaline that had carried her through the night had finally ebbed, revealing something terrible underneath. Her hands shook uncontrollably as she fumbled with a small medical kit hidden in her bag. The device inside, military-grade, unmarked, pricked her finger and analyzed the blood sample with quiet efficiency. The results made her stomach drop. Chemical imbalance. Cellular degradation. Protein markers she'd been monitoring for 3 years now accelerating beyond sustainable levels. The serum that made her exceptional was breaking down. The weapon they'd built was malfunctioning. They always said we were weapons with expiration dates, she whispered to the empty room, watching blue lines pulse faintly beneath her skin. I just didn't think mine would come so soon. She closed her eyes, remembering the warning from her last handler before she disappeared. Black units weren't built to last. 09. You've got 5 years from your last complete treatment, maybe 6. Then your systems start to collapse. 3 years had passed since she'd escaped Phantom Unit. 3 years of carefully rationing stolen stabilizers, of monitoring her deterioration, of existing in that precarious space between superhuman and time bomb. The tremor passed. She packed away the diagnostic unit, splashed cold water on her face, and straightened her clothing. No one could know. Especially not Jin Hyuk, who had already seen too much of what she could do, and who had been looking at her differently since the attack. With something beyond respect or gratitude. Something dangerously close to hope. If you've ever thought you'd see the warning signs before everything fell apart, think again. The people who wait to act always regret it later. Subscribe now before her body count includes herself. Anyone who won't, drop your excuse in the comments and own it before the clock hits 0. Jin Hyuk sat alone in his private study, surrounded by files and digital displays showing security footage from the night of the attack. He watched. For perhaps the 20th time, the fluid precision with which Zora Knight had neutralized his enemies. It wasn't just skill. It wasn't just training. Her movements possessed an almost inhuman quality, too fast, too precise, too calculated for normal human limitation. Black 09, Commander Hayes had called her. A designation, not a name. Jin's attention shifted to the intelligence data recovered from the surveillance hub hidden in his compound. His team had been working through encrypted files for hours, searching for anything that might explain why both Korean intelligence and American Black Ops had targeted him simultaneously. A notification flashed on his screen, high-priority file decryption complete. Jin opened the folder, expecting financial records or political connections that might have triggered the coordinated attack. Instead, he found a project codename that stopped his breath, Nightshade. The document bore a corporate logo he recognized instantly, Hyuk Technologies. His father's company. The research and development arm of the family empire that Jin had inherited at 19 when his father died unexpectedly of heart failure. His eyes scanned the technical language, biotechnology, neural enhancement, performance amplification. Military applications. Physiological optimization. And at the bottom of the document, a list of test subjects identified only by code names. Black 01 through Black 09. Jin's mouth went dry. He clicked through file after file, each revelation worse than the last. Hyuk Technologies hadn't just developed conventional weapons. It had helped create human ones. His father had funded the program that made Zora Knight. The intercom on his desk buzzed. Sir, your cousin Seo Jun is awake and asking to speak with you. Jean closed the files, his expression hardening into something cold and focused. Tell him I'm coming. Seo Jun occupied a secure medical room in the East Wing, his shoulder heavily bandaged where Commander Hayes' bullet had struck him. Despite the injury and painkillers, his eyes were alert when Jean entered, watchful in that particular way that suggested he was calculating advantages even from a hospital bed. Cousin, Seo Jun greeted him, attempting to sit up straighter. I hear we survived the night thanks to your new bodyguard. Jean remained standing, studying his cousin with new suspicion. Did you know about Project Nightshade? The brief flicker in Seo Jun's eyes confirmed everything before he could compose his expression. Ah. You found those files. Answer the question. Seo Jun sighed, settling back against his pillows. Yes. Not everything, but enough. Uncle kept certain projects compartmentalized, even from family. Tell me what you know about Black 09. A humorless smile crossed Seo Jun's face. Your father believed in creating the perfect soldier. One that would eventually protect the Hyuk dynasty when enemies became too powerful. Black 09 was his crowning achievement. She has a name, Jean said, voice dangerously soft. Zora Knight. Names are for people, Seo Jun replied dismissively. She was built, not born. Jin's hand moved before he consciously decided to strike, gripping his cousin's injured shoulder with precise pressure. Seo Jun gasped, color draining from his face. Careful, cousin, Jin warned, releasing his grip. You're speaking about the woman who saved all our lives last night. Show appropriate respect. Sweat beaded on Seo Jun's forehead as he nodded quickly. Of course. My apologies. Jean stepped back, controlling his unexpected anger. Everything you know about the program. Now. Through pained breaths, Seo Jun explained what he understood, that Hyuk Technologies had partnered with American military research divisions to develop enhanced soldiers. That Jin's father had invested heavily in the program with the understanding that the Hyuk family would receive priority access to the technology and possibly a dedicated operative for protection. The Americans took most of the successful subjects, Seo Jun concluded. Your father was disappointed. He believed we'd been cheated out of our investment. Investment, Jean repeated, the word bitter in his mouth. You mean the people they transformed into weapons? Seo Jun's expression suggested he didn't understand Jin's moral objection. It was business. Cutting-edge technology that would have given us an advantage over every rival family in Asia. And you never thought to mention this to me? After I inherited the company? Your father's instructions were clear, certain projects would remain buried until the right time. Seo Jun attempted a placating smile. Besides, it was discontinued years ago. Ancient history. Jean studied his cousin, seeing clearly for the first time the calculation behind his loyalty. Ancient history is currently securing our compound, cousin. And I suspect she doesn't consider her transformation quite so historical. He left Seo Jun's room with his mind racing, connecting pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known existed until now. His family legacy was stained with more than just organized crime. His father. The man he'd idolized, whose business acumen and strategic brilliance had built an empire, had engineered human weapons. Including the woman who had just saved his life. Zora found temporary relief in physical exertion. The training room in the East Wing offered privacy and equipment sophisticated enough to challenge even her enhanced capabilities. She pushed her body relentlessly, hoping that enough physical stress might force her systems to stabilize. It had worked before, in the early days after leaving Phantom Unit. Pain sometimes reset the chemical cascade that regulated her enhancements, buying precious time before the next deterioration cycle began. Her movements blurred as she worked through combat sequences at inhuman speed, her body remembering patterns programmed during years of optimization. Each strike precise. Each footfall measured. Her skin grew slick with sweat that carried a faint blue luminescence. A side effect of the compounds breaking down in her bloodstream. She didn't hear Jean enter. Didn't sense his presence until she completed a spinning kick and found him standing by the door, expression unreadable, a tablet in his hand. Zora stilled, instantly aware of how abnormal her performance would appear to ordinary eyes. How much she had revealed without intending to. "You need to rest," Gene said, his voice carefully neutral. "After last night." "I'm fine," she cut him off, grabbing a towel to wipe away the telltale sweat. "Just maintaining readiness." Gene stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind him. "We need to talk, Ms. Knight. Or should I call you Black 09? The designation froze her mid-motion. She turned slowly, eyes narrowing as she registered the tablet in his hand. "Where did you hear that name?" Instead of answering, Gene set the tablet on a bench and pulled up a document. The Nightshade Protocol Technical Overview, complete with the Hugh Technologies logo prominently displayed. "My father's company built the technology that made you," Gene said quietly. "Did you know that when you took this job?" The revelation hit Zora like a physical blow. She had known Hugh Technologies was one of several corporate partners in the program, but not that it belonged to Jin's family. Not that her current employer was the son of one of her creators. "No," she answered honestly, keeping her voice steady despite the anger building in her chest. "I knew the company name. Not the connection to you. So this is coincidence. You appearing at exactly the moment I needed protection." "I don't believe in coincidence," Zora replied coldly. "But I also don't believe in fate. I took this job because I needed work that matched my skills. Nothing more." Gene studied her with that penetrating gaze that seemed to see too much. "These files explain a great deal about your abilities last night. About how one person could neutralize 15 elite operatives without killing them. You're telling me the man you worshipped made me a machine," Zora said, bitterness seeping into her voice despite her control. "I didn't know," Gene insisted, genuine distress breaking through his composed exterior. "That's the problem, none of you ever do until the ghosts start breaking down." Her hand trembled violently as she spoke, the involuntary movement betraying the deterioration she'd been hiding. Gene noticed immediately, his focus sharpening. "You're sick." "I'm not sick," she corrected harshly. "I'm malfunctioning. There's a difference." She turned away, intending to leave before revealing more weakness, but her body betrayed her. The room tilted sharply as her vision fractured into prismatic fragments. Her legs buckled, systems misfiring as the chemical imbalance spiked through her central nervous system. Gene moved with surprising speed, catching her before she hit the ground. His arms were unexpectedly strong, his grip secure as he lowered her carefully to the floor. "I'm calling my physician," he said, reaching for his phone. Zora grabbed his wrist, her grip tight enough to make him wince. "Not a normal doctor. Won't help. Need someone who understands the program." For the first time, genuine fear crossed Gene Hyuk's face, not for himself, but for her. The expression was so unexpected, so at odds with the cold crime lord she'd been hired to protect, that Zora felt something shift between them. A boundary dissolving that neither had acknowledged existed. "I know someone," Gene said, his free hand unconsciously brushing sweat-dampened hair from her forehead. "A former researcher who worked with my father. He'll be discreet." Zora wanted to refuse, to maintain the independence that had kept her alive since escaping Phantom Unit. But the reality of her deteriorating condition couldn't be ignored. Without help, without stabilizers, her remaining time would be measured in weeks, not months. She released his wrist and nodded once, the motion sending fresh pain cascading through her skull. "Fine. But no hospitals. No records." "Agreed," Gene said, already sending a secure message on his phone. "Can you walk?" Zora forced herself to her feet through sheer will, refusing his offered assistance. "I've fought through worse," she said, though the effort left her visibly strained. "Just lead the way." As they left the training room, Zora caught sight of her reflection in a wall of mirrors, her eyes unnaturally bright, veins visible beneath her dark skin with a faint blue phosphorescence. The ghost was showing through the human shell. Time was running out faster than she'd calculated. The question was whether Jin Hyuk would prove to be her salvation or the final inheritor of the system designed to use her until nothing remained. Dr. Min arrived within the hour, a thin, precise man in his 60s with the careful movements of someone accustomed to handling dangerous materials. Jin had installed Zora in a secure room in his private wing, away from curious eyes and potential security breaches. The doctor asked no questions about why a Korean crime lord was concerned with the health of an American woman with military enhancements. He simply unpacked sophisticated equipment from an unmarked case and began his examination with methodical efficiency. Jin watched from the doorway, his expression returning to the unreadable mask he typically wore in business negotiations. Only the tension in his shoulders betrayed his concern. After 30 minutes of tests, blood analysis, neural response monitoring, cellular degradation mapping, Dr. Min's face grew increasingly grave. He spoke quietly to Zora in terms only someone familiar with the Nightshade protocol would understand, then turned to address Jin. "May I speak freely?" he asked, glancing between them. Zora nodded once. "He knows about the program. Tell him everything." Dr. Min's clinical detachment slipped, revealing momentary compassion before his professional demeanor returned. The Nightshade protocol was designed with a terminal feature, what the developers called a sunset clause. The enhanced cellular structure begins to break down after approximately 7 years without specific treatment. "Why build in failure?" Jin asked, his voice hard. "Control," Dr. Min and Zora answered simultaneously. The doctor continued, "The subjects required regular treatments to maintain stability. Without them, the enhancements that made them exceptional begin to turn against their own biology. It ensured compliance and prevented rogue operatives from remaining effective if they escaped oversight. And you've been without these treatments for how long?" Jin directed the question to Zora. 3 years, she answered flatly. "I've been administering modified stabilizers from supplies I took when I left. But they're running out, and the effectiveness is diminishing with each dose." Dar. Min nodded gravely. "The deterioration is accelerating. The modified stabilizers have slowed the process but not halted it. Without the complete treatment protocol." He hesitated. "How long?" Zora pressed, her voice steady despite the death sentence she knew was coming. 3 months, he replied. "Perhaps 4 if we can synthesize a partial stabilizer from the samples I've taken today. But without the original formula." He left the implication hanging. Jin stepped fully into the room, his decision visibly made. "And a complete cure? Is it possible?" Dr. Min considered this carefully before answering. "Theoretically, yes. We would need the original formula, the complete Nightshade protocol documentation. But those records would be classified at the highest levels. Where would they be kept?" Jin asked. 2 places, the doctor replied. Phantom Unit secured archives, which would be nearly impossible to access. And he glanced at Jin with visible hesitation. "And where else?" Jin prompted. "Your father's personal research vault," Dr. Min finally admitted. He insisted on maintaining complete records of all projects Hyuk Technologies funded, regardless of classification level. It was unusual, but given his connections, the military partners accommodated his demands. Jin absorbed this information silently, the implications crystallizing in his mind. His father. The man who had taught him about honor, about responsibility to family, had kept secret records of human experimentation. Had helped create weapons like Zora, only to build in their destruction as a control mechanism. "Where is this vault?" Jin asked. "Sir, I don't think." "Where?" Jin's voice carried the quiet authority that had made him feared throughout Seoul's underworld. Dr. Min straightened slightly. "I don't know the exact location. Your father was extremely secretive about his private archives. But there were rumors among the research division about a facility on Jeju Island, disguised as a private retreat." Jin nodded once, decision made. "Prepare whatever treatment you can with the samples you have. Buy us as much time as possible. I'll find the vault." Zora, who had been silently processing her prognosis, finally spoke. "Why are you doing this? You've known what I am for less than a day. Your family helped create me, then built in my destruction. Why try to save what was designed to break?" Jean met her gaze directly, something unspoken passing between them, a recognition, perhaps, of how their fates had become intertwined beyond employer and protector. "Because my father's legacy is my responsibility," he said finally. "And because you chose to protect me when you could have let me die. Honor demands no less in return." The simplicity of his answer, rooted in the same code that governed his business dealings and family obligations, struck Zora more deeply than any emotional plea might have. Jean Hyuk saw her survival as a matter of balance, of reciprocity. Not charity or pity, but equal exchange. For someone who had been treated as property for most of her life, this recognition of mutual obligation represented something she had rarely experienced: respect. 3 months, she said quietly, accepting both the timeline and his commitment. "Let's make them count. You're watching someone run out of time. If you scroll past without subscribing, remember, you'd be one of the bystanders who did nothing while the strongest person you knew disappeared." Those too comfortable to act can explain themselves in the comments when the countdown hits 0. News traveled quickly through Seoul's underworld. The attack on Jean Hyuk's compound had been unprecedented in its scale and coordination. And its failure had created ripples that spread through criminal enterprises, intelligence agencies, and corporate interests alike. Most significant was the whispered information about the Black Lady who had single-handedly neutralized 15 elite assassins without taking a single life. Descriptions varied in their details, but all agreed on the essential truth: she was something beyond ordinary. Something valuable. Something that could tip the balance of power if controlled. And now, 3 days after the full moon assault, rumors began circulating that she was vulnerable. That the woman who had seemed unstoppable had a weakness after all. Jin's security chief reported the changing landscape during their morning briefing. 4 different syndicates have put out feelers about her identity. 2 have offered alliances in exchange for shared access to her skills. And our sources in the police department indicate unusual interest from foreign intelligence services. "And Hayes?" Jean asked, referring to the American commander who had led the attack. Released through diplomatic channels, the security chief replied, frustration evident in his voice. "Our government contacts indicate pressure from the highest levels. He left Korea yesterday, officially. And unofficially, no confirmation of departure. He could still be operating in country with deniable assets." Jean absorbed this information silently, calculating implications and risks. The equation had changed drastically now that he understood Zora's condition and his family's connection to it. What had begun as a simple security arrangement had evolved into something far more complex, a reckoning with his father's legacy and a race against biological time. "Double the security details at all properties," he ordered. "Restrict information about Ms. Knight's condition to our inner circle only. Anyone discussing her status outside secure channels will be considered compromised." His lieutenant nodded, recognizing the severity in Jin's tone. "And Ms. Knight herself? She's requested access to our weapons cache and transportation resources." Jean frowned. "For what purpose?" "She didn't specify, sir. But she's been studying the Nightshade files you recovered, focusing on names and locations of former research personnel." Suspicion bloomed in Jin's mind, not of betrayal, but of Zora taking matters into her own hands. Of pursuing a solution independently rather than waiting for his resources to locate his father's vault. "Where is she now?" he asked. "In her quarters, sir. She's declined medical monitoring for the past 12 hours. Dar. Min is concerned about the effectiveness of the stabilizer he synthesized." Jean dismissed his security team and made his way to Zora's quarters in the East Wing. He knocked once, receiving no response. After a moment's hesitation, he overrode the security lock with his master code, an invasion of privacy justified by medical concern. The room was empty, the bed untouched. On the desk lay a single handwritten note. "Some ghosts should stay buried. Thank you for showing me what it means to protect something that matters. Jin's hand clenched around the paper, a rare spike of emotion breaking through his controlled exterior. She had fled his protection to pursue her own solutions, or perhaps to ensure her deterioration wouldn't endanger his operation. Either way, the result was the same. Zora Knight had disappeared into Seoul with a death sentence counting down in her blood and multiple organizations hunting her for the technology she contained. Jin activated his secure communication channel. Full alert. Find Zora Knight. Priority 1. For the first time in years, Jin Hyuk felt something beyond the calculated concern of a business leader protecting an asset. Something that made his chest tight and his decisions sharper. Fear. Not for himself, but for her. Zora moved through Seoul's shadows with practiced invisibility. 3 years of living off-grid had taught her how to disappear in plain sight, how to adjust her posture, her gait, her energy to become forgettable even to trained observers. The tremors had worsened in the 12 hours since she'd left Jin's compound, but she pushed through the discomfort with grim determination. She had survived worse during Phantom Unit training. Had performed missions with broken bones and internal bleeding. This was just another form of pain to compartmentalize. Her first target was a former Nightshade researcher who had relocated to Seoul after the program's official termination. Dr. Park Soo-min now worked for a pharmaceutical company developing performance enhancers for elite athletes, a legitimate career that nonetheless utilized skills developed during darker government projects. Zora observed her target from across the street, noting the security measures at the corporate headquarters. Standard corporate protocols, nothing that would stop someone with her training. But direct infiltration wasn't her plan. Not when there were simpler approaches. She waited until Dr. Park left the building for lunch, then followed at a discreet distance to a small restaurant several blocks away. The doctor ate alone, focused on her tablet while mechanically consuming her meal. Zora slid into the seat opposite her without invitation. "Hello, doctor. It's been a while." "Dar." Park froze, recognition and fear washing across her face in quick succession. "Black 09, she whispered, glancing nervously around the restaurant. "You're supposed to be dead?" Zora suggested calmly. "Decommissioned?" Many things about the program didn't work as designed. The doctor's hand trembled slightly as she set down her chopsticks. "What do you want?" "I'm not involved anymore. I've been out for years." "Information," Zora replied simply. "About Hyuk Technologies' involvement in Nightshade. Specifically, their private research archives." Dr. Park's expression shifted subtly, surprise replacing fear. "You don't know. After all this time." "Know what?" The doctor leaned forward, voice dropping to a near whisper. Jin Woo Hyuk wasn't just a financial partner. He was the primary architect of the neural enhancement protocols. The Americans provided the delivery systems and training protocols, but the core technology. The reason black units were so effective, that was all Hyuk. The revelation sent a chill through Zora that had nothing to do with her deteriorating condition. Jin's father hadn't merely funded the program that made her. He had designed it. Had conceived of the very changes that had transformed her from human to weapon. "Why?" she asked, the single word carrying the weight of years of pain and loss. Dr. Park's expression softened into something almost like pity. He lost his wife to an assassination attempt. The killers were targeting him but hit her instead. After that, he became obsessed with creating perfect protection. Bodyguards who couldn't be bribed, couldn't be distracted, couldn't fail. And the sunset clause? The built-in deterioration. Was that his design too? The doctor hesitated, clearly weighing how much to reveal. That was contested. The American partners insisted on it as a control measure. Jin Woo argued against it initially, but eventually compromised. He retained the complete formula, though, including stabilization protocols that could potentially remove the sunset clause entirely. Hope flared briefly in Zora's chest before practical caution dampened it. Where would these records be kept? His private research facility. It's on Jeju Island, disguised as a family retreat. Underground levels contain complete archives of everything Hyuk Technologies ever developed. Dr. Park hesitated, then added, but it's not just about finding the formula. The treatment requires specialized equipment, specific compounds that aren't commercially available. Where would I find those? You wouldn't, the doctor said bluntly. Not without significant resources and connections. The kind that. She trailed off, studying Zora with new understanding. You're working with his son, aren't you? With Jin Hyuk. Zora kept her expression neutral. My associations aren't relevant to this conversation. Dr. Park actually laughed, a short, humorless sound. Oh, they're entirely relevant. History repeating itself. Another Hyuk, another black unit serving as protector. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Does he know what you are? What his father built? He's learning, Zora replied carefully. Now tell me exactly where on Jeju I can find this facility. 20 minutes later, Zora left the restaurant with coordinates memorized and a clearer understanding of what she was facing. The doctor's final warning echoed in her mind as she made her way through Seoul's crowded streets. The sunset clause isn't just about control, 09. It's about preventing evolution. The enhancements don't just break down, they transform. No one knows what happens in the final stages because no subject has ever been allowed to reach them. That uncertainty terrified even Jin Woo-hyuk. Jin Hyuk had built his empire through meticulous planning and decisive action. When standard approaches failed, he created new ones. When obstacles appeared, he removed them or circumvented them with equal efficiency. Finding Zora Knight would require all these skills and more. She was not merely running, she was hunting. Following leads that only someone with her specialized knowledge would recognize. He deployed his resources strategically. Surveillance teams at transportation hubs, informants activated throughout the city, digital monitoring of anything that might indicate her movements. But Jean also approached the problem from a different angle, immersing himself in the Nightshade files to understand not just what Zora was, but how she might think. What he discovered disturbed him on levels beyond the already troubling reality of human experimentation. The psychological conditioning imposed on black units was comprehensive. Designed to create operatives who functioned perfectly within command structures but struggled with independent decision-making outside mission parameters. Yet Zora had broken that conditioning. Had escaped, survived, built a new identity. The psychological resilience required was almost as extraordinary as her physical capabilities. Jean was studying these files in his private office when his security chief entered without knocking, a breach of protocol that indicated urgent news. We've located her, the man reported. Facial recognition matched her leaving a research facility in Gangnam an hour ago. She accessed Dr. Park Soo-min's private laboratory using the doctor's credentials. Jean pulled up the security footage on his screen, watching as Zora moved through the building with purpose. Her movements were different than during the night of the attack, slightly less fluid, more deliberate, as if compensating for physical limitations. The deterioration is progressing faster than Dr. Min estimated, Jean observed. Where did she go after leaving the facility? Transportation hub in Yongsan. Purchased a ticket to Jeju Island under an alias. The flight leaves in 90 minutes. Jean stood immediately. Prepare my private jet. Security detail of 6, our most discreet team. And contact Dr. Min. We'll need him on Jeju. As his team mobilized with practiced efficiency, Jean returned to the files on his desk. One particular document had caught his attention, a psychological assessment of Black 09 conducted shortly before her disappearance from the program. The final note from the evaluating psychologist stood out starkly. Subject demonstrates concerning levels of autonomy and ethical reasoning beyond programmed parameters. Recommended for immediate recalibration or decommissioning. The combination of enhanced capabilities with independent moral framework represents unacceptable risk to operational security. In clinical language, the report described what Jean had recognized instinctively during their brief association: Zora Knight wasn't just physically exceptional. She had somehow retained her humanity despite everything designed to strip it away. Now that humanity was driving her to Jeju Island, to the heart of his father's secret legacy. To the place where answers waited, along with dangers neither of them fully understood. Jean secured the files and prepared to follow her. Not as her employer. Not even as the son of her creator. But as the one person who might understand the burden of legacies imposed rather than chosen. The Hyuk family retreat on Jeju Island presented a study in deliberate contrast. Traditional Korean architecture blending seamlessly with modern security features, natural beauty surrounding carefully designed defensibility. To casual observers, it was merely an exclusive private estate. To those who knew what to look for, it was a fortress disguised as a sanctuary. Zora approached from the less monitored northern perimeter, where volcanic rock formations provided natural cover for her approach. The tremors had worsened during her journey, requiring a double dose of Dr. Min's synthesized stabilizer just to maintain basic motor function. Even so, her movements lacked their usual fluid precision. Time was running out faster than anticipated. The doctor's warning about transformation rather than simple deterioration added urgency beyond her personal survival. If something was evolving within her, something beyond the original Nightshade protocols, understanding it became crucial. Security systems yielded to her expertise, not easily, but inevitably. Jin Woo-hyuk had designed impressive protections, but had also inadvertently trained his perfect infiltrator through the very program he'd created. Zora's enhancements allowed her to process security patterns at accelerated speeds, to move between sensor ranges with calculated timing, to override systems with the specialized knowledge implanted during her training. The entrance to the underground facility was concealed within what appeared to be a traditional meditation pavilion. A sliding panel revealing a biometric scanner keyed to Hyuk family DNA. This presented the first significant obstacle. Zora lacked the genetic key to access the facility directly. She was considering alternative entry methods when movement at the main compound caught her attention. Vehicles approaching, black SUVs with the distinctive profile of security transports. Multiple teams deploying with coordinated efficiency. Not Jin's people. Their movement patterns were wrong. Too aggressive, too exposed. These were hunters, not protectors. Zora melted back into the cover of the surrounding vegetation, assessing the new threat. At least 20 operatives, some in tactical gear that suggested private military contractors, others moving with the distinctive patterns of intelligence agents. A coordinated force representing multiple interests, all converging on the Hyuk facility. Her presence had been detected. Or, more likely, anticipated by someone who understood what she would need to survive. A familiar silhouette emerged from the lead vehicle, Commander Hayes, supposedly departed from Korea but clearly still operational. His presence confirmed Zora's suspicion, this wasn't about Jin Hyuk anymore. This was about recovering Black 09 and the technology she contained. The compound security systems activated in response to the intrusion, automated defenses deploying with unexpected intensity. Jin Woo-hyuk had protected his research with lethal measures that his son might not even know existed. Gunfire erupted as Hayes' team engaged with the defensive systems. The chaos provided cover, but also accelerated Zora's timeline. Once Hayes secured the compound, accessing the underground facility would become nearly impossible. She needed to move now, despite lacking the genetic key for direct access. Fortune, or perhaps fate, intervened in the form of a sleek helicopter approaching from the south. Unlike the tactical force already engaging the compound's defenses, this arrival maintained distance, setting down at a secondary landing zone beyond the main security perimeter. Even from a distance, Zora recognized Jin Hyuk's profile as he exited the aircraft, accompanied by a small security detail and what appeared to be medical personnel. Two paths lay before her. Continue her independent infiltration, facing increasing odds of failure as multiple forces converged on the facility, or ally with the son of her creator, the man whose family legacy had both made and broken her. The decision crystallized with unexpected clarity. Survival was no longer the sole objective. Understanding was. And for that, she needed access only Jin Hyuk could provide. As gunfire intensified at the main compound, Zora moved through the cover of native vegetation toward Jin's position, her approach silent despite the tremors that threatened her coordination. His security detail detected her seconds before she emerged, weapons raising before Jin himself recognized her and ordered them to stand down. "You're getting predictable," Jin observed, though relief briefly softened his typically impassive expression. "Following family ghosts to Jeju." "You're the one who arrived by helicopter in the middle of a firefight," Zora countered. "Not exactly subtle." "Haze?" Jin asked, nodding toward the distant compound where tactical teams were now breaching the main building. "And friends. Multiple agencies, multiple interests. All focused on your father's research." She gestured toward the meditation pavilion she'd been examining. "The entrance to the underground facility is there. Biometric security keyed to Hyuk DNA." Jin's eyes narrowed slightly. "How convenient that I happen to have some." "Almost like your father planned for this scenario," Zora agreed. "Though I doubt he anticipated me being the one accompanying his son." Dr. Min stepped forward from behind Jin's security detail, medical concern overriding protocol. "Your condition has deteriorated significantly," he observed, noting the subtle tremors in Zora's hands, the unnatural brightness in her eyes. "The synthesized stabilizer should have maintained baseline function for at least another week." "Accelerated degradation," Zora confirmed tersely. "Or something else entirely. Either way, the clock's running faster than calculated." Jin made a rapid decision, signaling his security team. Two-part approach. Security team creates a diversion at the main compound, drawing Hayes' attention. Meanwhile, we access the underground facility and secure the research. As his team coordinated the tactical response, Jin turned to Zora. "Can you still fight if necessary?" The question carried no judgment, no doubt, just practical assessment of capabilities before entering a potentially hostile situation. Zora met his gaze directly. "Not like before. Not with the same consistency. But I'm still functional." "Functional," Jin repeated, a hint of something like sadness touching his expression. "Is that how you see yourself? A function rather than a person?" The unexpected philosophical question caught Zora off guard. "It's what I was designed to be. Yet you escaped. Built a new identity. Made choices no mere function could make." Jin's perception cut too close to truths Zora rarely acknowledged even to herself. "Whatever they built you to be, you've become something else entirely." Before she could respond, gunfire intensified at the main compound as Jin's security team engaged, creating the promised diversion. Jin nodded toward the meditation pavilion. "Let's find out what my father was really building all those years ago." The biometric scanner recognized Jin immediately, panels sliding open to reveal a sleek elevator that descended deep into the volcanic rock beneath the island. As they dropped below ground level, leaving the sounds of conflict behind, Zora felt something shift in the air, a stillness, a sense of boundary being crossed. The facility that greeted them when the elevator doors opened was unlike anything Zora had expected. Not a sterile laboratory or hardened bunker, but a space that resembled a traditional Korean library, wood panels, scrolls, and physical books sharing space with advanced technology and harmonious design. "My father's true sanctuary," Jin said quietly, taking in the space with evident surprise. "I never knew this existed." Central computer terminals activated at their approach, responding to Jin's presence with automated protocols. Screens illuminated, displaying file structures organized with meticulous precision. Decades of research cataloged by project, date, and security classification. "Search for Nightshade," Zora instructed, her focus narrowing to the single objective that might extend her rapidly diminishing lifespan. Jin navigated the system with intuitive ease, the interface seemingly designed specifically for Hyuk family access. Within minutes, they located the complete Nightshade protocol documentation, including the stabilization formulas Zora had been seeking. But what they found alongside it transformed their understanding entirely. "This can't be right," Dr. Min whispered, reading through the technical specifications with growing disbelief. The sunset clause wasn't just a control mechanism. It was a transitional phase. Jean looked up sharply. Transitional to what? To the true nightshade potential, the doctor replied, his voice hushed with scientific awe. The deterioration we're witnessing isn't system failure, it's metamorphosis. The enhanced biology breaking down and rebuilding towards something else entirely. What exactly are you saying? Jean demanded. Dr. Min turned to Zora, professional detachment giving way to genuine wonder. You're not dying, Ms. Knight. You're evolving into what the program actually intended before the military partners demanded control measures. Your creator, Jean Woo-hyuk, designed you to transcend your initial parameters. The revelation struck Zora with physical force, momentarily stealing her breath. That's impossible. Black units were weapons. Tools. Not, whatever you're suggesting. Not weapons, came a new voice from the elevator entrance. Protectors. Commander Hayes stood with weapon drawn, a small tactical team securing the space behind him. Blood streaked one side of his face, evidence of the conflict above ground. Step away from the terminals, he ordered. This facility is now under United States government authority. Jin's security detail moved to defensive positions, creating potential crossfire that made any shooting a mutually assured destruction scenario. Jin himself remained calm, positioning himself slightly in front of Zora, protective gesture that didn't escape Hayes' notice. Still playing bodyguard to the asset, Mr. Hyuk? Hayes asked with cold amusement. How does it feel knowing Daddy designed her specifically to keep little princes like you safe? Jean ignored the taunt, addressing the commander directly. You're operating on foreign soil without sanction. This facility belongs to my family. Your family stole proprietary technology, Hayes countered. Black 09 is government property, as is the research that created her. She has a name, Jean replied, voice dropping to that dangerous softness Zora had witnessed during the full moon attack. Zora Knight. And she belongs to no one but herself. Hayes' laugh held no humor. Noble sentiment from a crime lord. But facts are facts. She was built, not born. Designed for a purpose she's currently failing to fulfill. Throughout this exchange, Zora had been silently reviewing the Nightshade documentation displayed on the screen before her. Absorbing information at the accelerated rate her enhancements permitted. What she found confirmed Dr. Min's assessment while revealing something far more personal. You're wrong, she said finally, addressing Hayes directly. About all of it. She stepped forward, deliberately placing herself between Jean and Hayes. Despite the tremors still running through her system, her voice remained steady. The Nightshade Protocol wasn't military in origin. It was Jean Woo-hyuk's personal project. Initiated after his wife was killed in his place. The American military co-opted it, modified it for their purposes, added the control measures that keep subjects dependent. Her gaze held Hayes without flinching. I wasn't built to be your weapon. I was designed to be something beyond your control, which is exactly why you tried so hard to maintain it. Hayes' expression hardened. Philosophical debates about origin don't change current reality. You're degrading. Without proper treatment, which only we can provide, you'll be dead within weeks. No, Dr. Min interjected, scientific certainty overcoming his fear of the armed standoff. That's incorrect. According to these files, the process isn't terminal with proper management. It's transformative. Silence, Hayes snapped. You're interfering with a classified recovery operation. Jean moved with unexpected speed, accessing another section of the database while Hayes' attention was divided. Documents flashed across the screen. Genetic profiles, comparative analyses, bloodline tracing. Zora, Jean said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that drew her attention despite the tense standoff. There's something else you need to see. She glanced at the screen, information crystallizing into understanding that altered everything she believed about herself. Genetic markers highlighted in the analysis showed a distant but undeniable connection between her maternal DNA and the Hyuk bloodline. A relation distant enough to be coincidence if not for the deliberate selection process documented in Jean Woo's research notes. She hadn't been randomly chosen for the Nightshade protocol. She'd been specifically selected because her genetic makeup was compatible at levels no other candidate achieved. Because she shared markers with the family she was ultimately designed to protect. Your family, Jean said softly. Distant, perhaps, but blood nonetheless. So I was built to protect the Hyuks because I am one, Zora replied, bitter irony coloring her words. The universe has a sick sense of humor. Hayes had seen enough. This recovery operation is concluded. Black, 09, you will accompany us for proper medical intervention. Mr. Hyuk, your cooperation in this matter will be noted favorably by relevant authorities. And if I decline? Zora asked, though she already knew the answer. Then we take you anyway, Hayes replied matter-of-factly. And Mr. Hyuk joins his sister in custody for interference with national security operations. The mention of Mi-young, confirmation that she remained in government hands despite the raid's failure, caused a subtle shift in Jin's posture. Family loyalty ran deep, regardless of betrayal. Before anyone could respond further, the standoff was interrupted by a violent tremor that shook the entire facility, not from Zora's condition, but from structural instability above. The firefight on the surface had apparently triggered dormant security protocols in the compound. Warning lights flashed as the facility's systems registered critical damage. Jin Woo-hyuk had built final failsafes into his sanctuary. If breached by force, the entire structure would self-destruct, burying his secrets beneath tons of volcanic rock. The moment of distraction was all Zora needed. With reflexes still enhanced despite her deterioration, she moved. Not to attack Hayes, but to secure the data they'd come for. Her hand closed around a storage device connected to the terminal, yanking it free as the first explosions rocked the levels above them. Hayes fired, the bullet grazing Zora's arm as she dodged with inhuman speed. Jin's security detail returned fire, creating chaos in the confined space as the facility began tearing itself apart around them. We need to move, Jean shouted over the cacophony, already heading toward a secondary exit indicated on the facility schematic. This place is coming down. Zora followed, clutching the precious data while fighting a new wave of internal tremors that threatened her coordination. Her vision fractured, blue light pulsing at the edges as her system responded to the adrenaline spike with unpredictable intensity. They navigated through collapsing corridors, Jin's security detail covering their retreat while Hayes and his team pursued despite the structural failure. The secondary exit led them to a narrow tunnel cutting through volcanic rock toward the coastline, an escape route Jinwoo had built for worst-case scenarios. As they emerged onto a small, hidden dock where an emergency boat waited, Zora felt something fundamental shift within her biology. The pain that had been building for days suddenly intensified beyond anything she'd experienced during her original transformation. Her knees buckled as blue light visibly pulsed beneath her skin. Zora! Jean was at her side instantly, Dr. Min close behind with medical kit already open. It's happening faster than the files indicated, the doctor said urgently, preparing an injection of the stabilizer he'd brought. The stress, the combat, it's accelerated the process. What process? Jean demanded, supporting Zora's increasingly rigid form. What's happening to her? Before the doctor could answer, Hayes emerged from the tunnel entrance, bloodied but determined, weapon trained on their position. Step away from the asset, he ordered. Final warning. Jean didn't move, his body shielding Zora's convulsing form. You'll have to kill me first. Acceptable, Hayes replied coldly, finger tightening on the trigger. The shot never came. Instead, Hayes froze in mid-motion, eyes widening in shock as an invisible force seemed to hold him in place. Behind Jean, Zora's trembling hand was outstretched toward the commander, blue light pulsing visibly through her veins. For 3 terrifying seconds, her heart monitor flatlined completely, the digital readout on Dr. Min's emergency medical kit showing no cardiac activity. Jean felt her body go completely limp in his arms, the light beneath her skin fading to darkness. Then, with a gasping inhalation, Zora's eyes snapped open, glowing with unnatural blue intensity. Hayes collapsed unconscious as her hand dropped, whatever force she projected apparently requiring immense effort to maintain. Whatever you're going to do, do it fast, she whispered, voice strained as the blue light beneath her skin pulsed with renewed vigor. I don't think I'm dying anymore, Jean. I think I'm transforming. Her grip on his arm tightened with inhuman strength, the physical contact sending strange electrical sensations across his skin. Into what? He asked, witnessing something beyond his comprehension yet refusing to abandon her even now. Zora's eyes met his, terror and wonder mingling in their unearthly glow. Into whatever comes after human. As dawn broke over the horizon, Jean Hyuk cradled the transforming body of a woman designed by his father, connected to his bloodline, and now evolving into something beyond either of their understanding. Behind them, the Hyuk compound collapsed into ruin, burying decades of secrets. Before them, helicopters appeared on the horizon, reinforcements from multiple agencies converging on their position. In his hand, Jean clutched the data device containing the complete Nightshade protocol. Information that might save Zora, or might become the blueprint for a new generation of enhanced beings. The choice of what to do with this legacy now rested with him, the son tasked with atoning for his father's ambitions. Zora's body convulsed again, blue light emanating from her in pulsing waves that seemed to distort the very air around them. Whatever she was becoming, it was happening now, unstoppable, irreversible, unprecedented. And Jean Hyuk, heir to an empire built on shadows, made his decision. He would not abandon her to become another experiment, another weapon, another tool. Whatever emerged from this transformation, human or something beyond, deserved the right to determine its own fate. Hold on, he told her, signaling his remaining security detail to prepare the boat. This isn't over. This is just beginning. As helicopters closed in and dawn painted the sky above Jeju Island, Jean Hyuk faced the consequences of generations of Hyuk ambition, and the possibility that redemption might begin where creation had gone so terribly wrong. When her eyes open again, everything changes. Subscribed viewers will face what comes next, everyone else will just watch the world burn from the comments, asking why they hesitated. Don't be the one left out of the transformation.